Money doesn't buy happiness is just a very, very flawed saying. Hello, Catholiccontriversy here, and if you're watching this video, chances are you've heard the saying, money doesn't buy happiness. It's one of the most common pieces of wisdom and advice and sayings that personally I've heard. Like, I've heard this from so many different places, so many different um, wise elders, if you will. And, over the years, I've also heard many counters to this statement where people are talking about how that's just something that rich people say to make you not feel so bad about not having money, and how a lot of their problems would be solved if they had money, and that they're very unhappy because of all these different problems that they had. And it's a lot easier to cry in a hand me down minivan than it is to cry in a Lamborghini, and sure feels better to fly in a private jet than to take the Amtrak. So there's a lot to this, and the thing is that none of these statements are necessarily incorrect, because the problem is that happiness is way too broad of a word for the saying and what it's really trying to get to. Because let's look at what happiness is. So one way that someone can define happiness is a transitive properties of the opposite of suffering. And a lack of money causes suffering in a lot of instances. So it's like if you don't have money, can't buy food, can't get clean drinking water, can't get shelter, can't get functional clothing. You can't get climate controlled air conditioning and heating that's needed to survive in various different climates. You can't get basic medical needs and stuff done. So when you don't have money and you can't afford those sort of things, you're suffering because people need those in order to live. Just to keep your heart beating, you need to have those things. So, yeah, a lot of people, I'd say it's very fair to say that if you're suffering, you're not very happy. So, money can buy the things that prevent you from suffering. Therefore, by the transitive properties of suffering being the opposite of not suffering, and not suffering bringing happiness, money buys happiness. And then another thing is that what else is happiness? Happiness is joy, pleasure. That's a good way to say it, is that happiness can be pleasures. It's the good feelings that you get when you're playing your video games or collecting stuffed animals. So, yeah, there's money buys pleasures. It buys you those momentary joys. When people are talking about how the Lamborghini feels is so much better than the broken down minivan, yeah, I mean, there's functional elements to that, because I mean, if you rely on a vehicle to get from places to place where you need to go for needs, then yeah, if it's broken down. But at the same time, it's like, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Mustang, other high-end cars, yeah, it's going to feel a lot better when you have first class. That's a far more preferable way of travel than coach. So, yeah, it's happiness in that it makes you feel good. It's a pleasure. And money definitely can buy pleasures. But then the main thing is that when it comes to what the saying is really getting to, is that it's talking about long-term fulfillment, long-term joys, long-term needs. So money, it can't buy you a loving wife. One of the reasons that you got celebrities and stuff, other rich people that are like so unhappy and get miserable and need to take copious amounts of drugs in order to not kill themselves or whatever, to stave off the depression, is that, because they have so much money, they get depressed because all their relationships become superficial. You hear this a lot with like lottery winners, is that, they win the lottery, they now got millions of dollars, and all their friends, they just come to them for money. They just see them as a checkbook. They don't see them as themselves anymore. And it really eats at them because money is not able to buy the deep connections. It's not able to buy you those strong friendships that are based off of love. It can still make those. I can't speak from experience, but I'm sure that you can still make those deep connections because there's plenty of happy rich people out there. But at the same time, it's like money can't buy that. You need to do something else. You need to go into the community. You need to, you know, uh, build relationships. And that's not something that you can just say, walk into the friend store and buy a friend. Same thing as that money can't buy fulfillment. I mean, yeah, you can use money in order to fund your projects because if you're, architect or craftsman or artist or video maker or whatever, yeah, you're going to need money in order to buy the supplies and maintain you in order to do all the other lower hierarchy needs. But, you can't just, as much as college wants to try to tell you, you don't just say, here's money, give me talent, give me skills, give me capabilities, give me fulfillment, give me the happy heart and the vocational needs help me find what I'm meant to do in life. No, you got to go out there and find it for yourself. It's not something that you can just throw money at and figure out. There's plenty of people out there where, yeah, they got the money, but they just feel like empty because they're not doing anything. So, and then they try to fill the void with pleasures, but they're not able to fill the void with pleasures because that's not what they're actually missing in life. And that's the thing is that it's like, okay, you have the big fast car, but if you don't have anyone to share it with or something like that, then it's kind of what's the point? You feel lonely, you feel isolated, you feel lost. And you can throw the big elaborate parties, but if all your relationships are just surface level and very shallow, then you're still going to feel empty inside. I mean, I can't speak from experience, but this is just like what I've seen over the years because it's like celebrity marriages. They have the highest rate of divorce out of any population, I think. And that's just because it's like so many celebrity marriages are just so surface level. And, and it's because it's just all about money and fame and who they're associating with, and they're not able to actually form those deep connections because everything has to be so surface level. And that's the kind of thing that money can't buy. So that's really what it is that it's like to try to argue about whether or not money can buy happiness. It's just sort of a bit of a fool's argument and a fool's debate because it really comes down to how one is defining happiness. Because yeah, you can have two people that are both very unhappy for very different reasons. You can have the lower middle class, edge of the poverty line family where both parents got laid off. They're really struggling to scrape by, but it's a loving family. It's a loving household. The kids are there to support their parents, and the parents are there to support their kids, and they do everything they can for each other. So you've got that kind of fulfillment. You got that kind of happiness, but at the same time, you're suffering because you're missing out on a bunch of basic needs. And if you're missing out on the basic needs, you're definitely not having any of the pleasures. So it gets to a point where you kind of run out of things to talk about, if you will. But then on the other side, you have someone that is completely loaded, super rich, multimillionaire, but doesn't have any friends, doesn't have any family, doesn't have any of those close personal connections. So they feel miserable, and it's just kind of like they're both looking at each other, and it's like, oh man, I wish I could be like them because then I would know that people love me for me as opposed to just for my money. And oh man, I wish I was like them because they have all their needs met. They never have to worry about whether or not they're going to be able to go have a nice family vacation or if they're just going to vacation in the backyard again. And that's really what it comes down to, is that how does one define happiness? Because there's definitely a lot of happiness that money can buy, but at the same time, there's a lot of happiness that money can't buy. The short-term needs happiness, money definitely can buy, no doubt about it, because that's a lot of just the base needs of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But then the higher up needs money can't buy. That's all something that's intrinsic to the individual, something that people have to do for themselves, that they can't just buy. And when they do try to buy it, it doesn't really work out for them, as a lot of history has shown. So I hope that people just don't get tripped up on money doesn't buy happiness and money does buy happiness and who's right, who's wrong, because it's just a flawed saying. It's too broad of a definition of what is happiness. Because, yeah, I love my video games. I have a giant video game collection, and it brings me a fair amount of pleasure happiness. As you can see, I'm filming this inside my condo, and I can just throw around a can of beans like it's a prop. Just basic needs happiness. Things that I've bought, but, also married. I have a nice, loving wife. I didn't buy her. So, this has been Catholic Controversy signing off. May God bless you.